From the unexplained to the mundane, come join us on a journey to the fringe. Hello and welcome to Journey to the Fringe, where we are constantly referencing and building the extended Fringe podcast universe, which we cover, and today is definitely not going to be an exception. As Chelsea, we are once again looking at this mess of a situation that is 1980s ufology.
Oh.
We are your podcast hosts, Taylor and Chelsea, and today, Chelsea, do you want to take a guess?
Is it a person?
It is a person.
We're going to have to edit down the time here and make it seem like I did it really fast. It's Stanton Friedman?
It is not Stanton Friedman. Do you want one more guess?
Is it an asshole or a good guy?
Definitely an asshole.
The Wonder Playground guy?
Oh, no, it's not Eric
Why do
Van
I keep
Daniken.
forgetting it? Damn it. Okay, I give up.
Young Frau. Chelsea, today we are going to cover the life of John Lear, which
John Lear.
You are going to have a lot of fun with this.
Yes, another asshole.
Yes, this is going to be a two-parter episode. The first part is going to be kind of covering his life before ufology, and then his first dip into it. The next episode is going to be kind of everything that comes from there. So, Chelsea, to start this episode off, we actually have to start prior even to John Lear's birth.
Okay.
And that is with the life and adventures of William Powell Lear, who is Bill Lear, John's dad.
Okay.
And this is where all the fame comes from for John Lear for a long time.
Why?
Bill Lear is the founder of Learjets. It is a very big family, very wealthy family. I knew about that. At least I knew John Lear was related to the Lear family somehow. I did not know his dad also invented a type of battery eliminator for the B battery and 8-track cartridges for cars, as well as car radios.
Wow, that's impressive. I also have to say, not that I don't love UFOs and look at what we're doing now with our podcast, but I love these like super wealthy families and then their kids just like go off and they're like, I'm going to be a UFO investigator now. I'm sure you're going to obviously fill in about how it's going to happen, but there was one in the Alaska one we just did that the guys were like,
oh yeah, his dad was the senator.
Like political, and then this guy just like took it in a different direction.
Yeah. I think there's something to it where they're just used to never hearing no and everybody agreeing with them, where they're like, oh yeah, I can talk about this and nobody's going to disagree with me because I'm so smart.
Yeah,
I do
that's
legitimately
true.
think that's part of it.
Not that I wouldn't do something like this to make it my job if I couldn't, but I still haven't gotten there yet where I feel ready.
Well, and I always feel doubt about what I'm doing. Like, it's the reason partially that it takes so long to actually do an episode is you want to make sure that everything is right. Where I just don't think that there's that certain, if you're grown up in so much wealth and luxury, I don't think there's that push to be perfectly right or to even have it questioned.
Yeah, in all the assholes we've done, it's a certain type of person that makes it in this field.
And that would be a whole spiel that I would have to go on inherited wealth and billionaires in the capitalist class, but this is just going to focus on John Lear and his family. And I'm not even going to talk about the life of Bill Lear. I just need to make sure it's known that Bill Lear,
very well off,
very wealthy, he held in his 46-year career over 140 patents in his name. So like just tons of inventions and money that are flowing in from these. Okay. And from this, John Olsen Lear, the John Lear that we're going to be talking about, is born on December 3rd, 1942, to Bill Lear and his wife, Moya Marie Olsen Lear. It's important to say the mom's name because I definitely think of him as kind of like in that, what's the name of that? The Aviator that Leo DiCaprio played.
The Aviator?
It's that ridiculously wealthy guy from the 1920s, 30s.
Oh, Catch Me If You Can?
No, the movie's The Aviator.
Oh. Okay.
Anyhow, I definitely think of him as the Gilded Age class. Very wealthy, just very eccentric. Married multiple times. I think he has 7 kids in all, John Lear being one of them. And in fact, the family's so wealthy, his 2nd and 3rd birthday for John Lear were covered in the society pages of his local Ohio paper.
Wow.
Probably because they're so lavish. You can actually see them online. You have to subscribe to the website, though, to see them. And I'm not going to do that because what am I? Made of emails to subscribe to get spammed on? No.
Yeah, and just so that you can see a 2-year-old's birthday announcement.
Not announcement. It's covered.
Oh, okay.
In 1956, Lear flew his first flight at age 14. His first solo flight was at 16, and in 1960, Lear was hired as a pilot and public relation representative by his father's company. In 1962, Lear crashed a biplane during stunt flying at his boarding school. He underwent an emergency tracheotomy, a 5-hour surgery and a long convalescence. That year, Lear agreed to attend Pasadena, California Art College, but lost the $5,000 he had been given for tuition in the stock market. Lear graduates from the Institut La Rosey boarding school in Switzerland and attended Wichita State University, and Lear claimed that in 1959 he became the youngest American ever to climb the Swiss mountain, the Matterhorn. And you'll see this claim made many different ways, either the youngest person ever to climb the Matterhorn or the youngest American. In any event, it's just one of those things that rich people can do because they got the time and the money.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I had no way of becoming the youngest Canadian or anybody to climb the Matterhorn because I was in no position to get there nor hire the staff to be able to climb it.
It's true. It's true.
In 1965, Lear was employed by Paul Kelly Flying Services when its founder was killed while piloting a Learjet. Lear testified at the Civil Aeronautics Board investigation into the crash. Between May 23rd and 26, 1966, the Lear and crewmates flew a record-breaking flight around the world in a Learjet that covered 22,000 miles in 50 hours and 39 minutes. Then in August of 1966, Lear was featured in the Wichita Press after he piloted a Learjet carrying the rock band The Byrds, and the trip inspired them to write a song about the plane. The track is titled 242 Foxtrot, the Learjet song, and samples Lear's voice as he speaks over the radio, apparently. I didn't actually listen to the song for this.
How life-changing would this flight have been to be like, I need to write a song about this?
And include the pilot's voice.
Yeah, he must have been high.
They could have been high, yeah. And after they were done, they're probably like, I remembered it way different.
Yeah.
In 1968, Air Force personnel from Hamilton Air Force Base launched a rescue effort to help Lear land after heavy San Francisco fog interfered with landing, and traffic was cleared from the Golden Gate Bridge in anticipation of a forced landing. After a helicopter pilot established visual contact, Lear was able to successfully land at the base. So eventually, Lear ends up flying cargo planes for the CIA during the Vietnam era, and he claimed to have flown secret missions for the CIA between 1967 and 1983. Just some highlights from his career.
Okay, so nothing you can even prove.
I mean, as far as I know. And in 1979, John's dad, Bill, passes away. John's excluded from his father's will. Will, generous to John's children, but John himself receives $1, which he claims he never actually received. And this is a quote that he's given on many occasions. One of the greatest laughs I get when I make speeches is when I talk about my father's passing away. I know he thought highly of me, for he mentioned me 60 times, more than any of his children in his will. After each paragraph, his will states, except for John Olsen Lear.
So he says he was mentioned that much, but it's because it says except for.
And when it comes to the infamous will, John Lear says he doesn't really think it was his father who cut him out. I believe that mom forced him to cut me out because I was non-supportive of the Lear Fan Project, is his statement. I don't know what the Lear Fan Project is. There were many different reasons that were given. John specifically has said at times that it's because his father looked down upon pilots and considered him like a bus driver of the sky, so it was beneath his family. My guess is that he's kind of a prodigal son, very wasteful, very eccentric in his own right, without having the business savvy that his dad did. So he was just worried he'd blow the money. That's my guess. It's not mentioned anywhere.
Was he a UFO investigator at the point that his dad passed?
No. And in fact, this is where we get into it. So the dad dies in 1979, but in 1980, Lear moves to Nevada. And it's then that he becomes very interested in the stories that began to proliferate among American researchers after the story of the alleged crash of a flying saucer in Roswell, New Mexico had surfaced from public opinion thanks to the work of Stan Friedman, Bill Moore, and other investigators. This was somewhat working with his background as he would head to Groom Lake on the outskirts and basically look and watch for secret biplanes, which falls right into his background of being an avid pilot. How it works, because he's a little fuzzy on the details, but basically he worked for the CIA, so he has some connections with military. They're talking about things that they have seen around Groom Lake, and he gets involved in that community. He also gets involved on the internet early on, and he ends up writing his working hypothesis on what's going on with UFOs and posts it to this forum that we'll talk about a bit later. It's posted first on December 29th, 1987, and it gets revised again several times, with the final version eventually being established on August 25th, 1988. 1988. And we're going to read a pretty big excerpt from this to just kind of let us see how he fits into this whole thing.
Okay. I'm ready.
John Lear is a Lockheed L-1011 captain for a major U.S. airline and has flown over 160 different types of airplanes in 50 different countries. He holds 17 world speed records in the Learjet and is the only pilot ever to hold every airman certificate issued by the Federal Aviation Administration. Mr. Lear has flown missions worldwide for the CIA and other government agencies. A former Nevada state senator candidate who is the son of William P. Lear, designer of the Learjet, Lear became interested in UFOs in the summer of 1986 after talking with the United States Air Force personnel who had witnessed a UFO landing at Bentwater Air Force Base near London, England, and 3 small aliens walking up to Wing Commander General Gordon Williams. That's the preamble. This is actually called The UFO Cover-Up by John Lear. I think it gives you a bit of an idea of his personality as we read through it.
Okay.
The sun does not revolve around the Earth. The United States government has been in business with little gray extraterrestrials for about 20 years. That's the first paragraph.
I like it. Bold to begin with.
The first truth, stated here, got Giordano Brunos burned at the stake in 1600 for daring to propose it was real. The second truth has gotten far more people killed trying to state it publicly than will ever be known. But the truth must be told. The fact that the Earth revolves around the sun was successfully suppressed by the church for over 200 years, and eventually caused a major upheaval in the church, government, and thought. A realignment of social and traditional values. That was in the 1800s. Now, about 400 years after this first truth was pronounced, we must again face the shocking facts. The horrible truth the government has been hiding from us for over 40 years. Unfortunately, the horrible truth is far more horrible than the government has imagined. In its efforts to protect democracy, our government sold us to the aliens. And here is how it happened. But before I begin, I'd like to offer a word in defense of those who bargained us away. They had the best of intentions. Germany may have recovered a flying saucer in 1939. General James H. Doolittle went to Sweden in 1946 to investigate reports of ghost rockets, thousands of which have been sighted over a 7-month period. The horrible truth was known by only a few persons. They were indeed ugly little creatures shaped like praying mantises and were more advanced than us by perhaps 1 billion years. Of the original group that were the first to learn the horrible truth, several committed suicide, the most prominent of which was Defense Secretary James Forrestal, who jumped to his death from a 16th-story hospital window. Secretary Forrestal's medical records are sealed to this day. President Truman quickly put a lid on the secret and turned the screws so tight that the general public still thinks that flying saucers are a joke. Have I ever got a surprise for them? In 1947, Truman established a group of 12 men, top military and scientific personnel for their time. They were known as MJ-12, or Majestic 12. Although the group is today, none of the original members are still alive. The last one to die was Gordon Gray, former Secretary of the Army, in 1984. As each member passed away, the group itself appointed a new member to fill the position. There's some speculation that the group known as MJ-12 expanded to at least several more members. There were several more saucer crashes in the late 1940s. One in Roswell, New Mexico, one in Aztec, New Mexico, and one in Laredo, Texas, about 30 miles inside the Mexican border. And yes, those who have listened to our previous episodes are starting to get weird flags from this.
Yes.
The cover-up was so successful that as late as 1985, a senior scientist with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Dr. Al Hibbs, would look at videotapes of an enormous saucer and state for the record, quote, "I'm not going to assign anything to that UFO phenomena without a lot more data." End quote. Dr. Hibbs was looking at the naked emperor and saying he certainly looks naked, but that doesn't prove he's naked. Thousands of sightings occurred during the Korean War, and several more saucers were retrieved by the Air Force. Some were stored at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Some were stored at Air Force bases near the location of the crash sites. One saucer was so enormous and the logistical problems in transportation was so enormous that it was buried at the crash site and remains there today. The stories are legendary on transporting crash saucers over long distances. Moving only at night, purchasing complete farms, slashing through forests, blocking major highways, sometimes driving 2 and 3 lowboys in tandem with an extraterrestrial load 100 feet in diameter. On April 25th, 1964, the first official communication between these aliens and the US government took place at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. The 3 saucers landed at a prearranged area and a meeting was held between the aliens and intelligence officers of the US government. During the late 1960s or early 70s, MJ-12, representing the US government, made a deal with these creatures called EBEs, which Chelsea reminds me a lot of Ebens from Surfball.
I was just gonna say, Surfball wasn't the most creative piece of work I've ever listened to.
Yeah.
I think that's what even stood for.
It did. And yeah, I can't forget what the N stands for, but that's what it was. Extraterrestrial biological entities. The deal was that in exchange for technology that they would provide to us, we agreed to ignore the abductions that were going on and suppress information on the cattle mutilations. The EBEs assured MJ-12 that the abductions, usually lasting about 2 hours, were merely the ongoing monitoring of developing civilizations. In fact, the purpose of the abductions turned out to be, and he has 6 points here. 1. Insertions of a 3mm spherical device through the nasal cavity of the abductee into the brain. The device is used for the biological monitoring, tracking, and control of the abductee. 2. Implementation of post-hypnotic suggestions to carry out a specific activity during a specific time period, and the actuation of which will occur within the next 2 to 5 years.
Oh, they're Manchurian candidates?
Yeah. That we're supposed to basically have done whatever they're supposed to do by 1993.
I was just going to say, in the 5 years was what year? How many years ago?
3. Termination of some people so that they could function as sources of biological material and substances. 4. Termination of individuals who represent a threat to the continuation of their activity. 5. Affect genetic engineering experiments. And 6. Impregnation of human females and early terminations of pregnancies to secure the crossbred infants. So that's why abductions happen, Chelsea. Just so you're aware.
I've always wondered.
And there's going to be more to it, too.
He's laid it out pretty good for us on why the abductions are happening.
Yes.
I don't know why I've never found this list before when I've searched. It's a popular Google search, by the way. Why are abductions happening?
The US government was not initially aware of the far-reaching consequences of their deal. They were led to believe that the abductions were essentially benign, and since they figured the abductions would probably go anyway whether or not they agreed, they merely insisted that a current list of abductees be submitted on a periodic basis to MJ-12 and the National Security Council. Does this sound incredible? An actual list of abductees sent to the National Security Council? Read on, because I have news for you. I just kept that in there for his flair. He definitely has some personality. Chelsea, this is, just brace yourself for this, okay?
Okay.
Are you ready?
Okay, I'm holding on.
The EBEs have genetic disorders in that their digestive system has atrophied and is not functional. Some speculate that they were involved in some type of accident or nuclear war, or that they possibly are on the backside of an evolutionary genetic curve. In order to sustain themselves, they use an enzyme or hormonal secretion obtained from the tissue they extract from humans and animals.
Ew.
Note, cows and humans are genetically similar. In the event of a national disaster, cow hemoglobin can be used by humans. The secretion obtained are then mixed with hydrogen peroxide and applied on their skin by spreading or dipping parts of their bodies in solution. The body absorbs solutions and then excretes the waste back out through the skin. The cattle mutilation prevalent through the period 1973 to 83 and publicly noted through newspapers and magazine stories and documentaries produced by Linda Moulton Howe for the Denver CBS affiliate KMGH were for the collection of these tissues by the aliens.
Wow, that was an incredible piece of work. I assume he's done all the research on this to back that up.
And cited it, of course, yes.
Of course, of course.
It keeps going. I just need to finish this next little part before we make comment. This has also been noted in human mutilations. One of the first known mutilations was Sergeant Jonathan P. Lewitt. His remains were discovered at the White Sands Missile Test Range in 1956, 3 days after an Air Force major witnessed his abduction by a disc-shaped object at 0300 while on a search for missile debris downrange. From some of the evidence, it is apparent that this surgery is accomplished in most cases while the victim, animal, or human is still alive. The various parts of the body are taken to various underground laboratories, one of which is known to be near the small New Mexico town of Chelsea. Do you want to guess?
Aztec.
Dulce.
Dulce. Oh, I should have known.
Yeah, and this jointly occupied CIA alien facility has been described as enormous with huge tiles that go on forever. Witnesses have reported huge vats filled with an amber liquid with parts of human bodies being stirred inside. So yeah, that's why abductions happen, Chelsea.
Okay, I'm glad that we finally been able to find the answer to let everyone listening know. One question that is coming to my brain right now, which I'm sure we're going to get to, is who does this guy know? Who is he friendly with?
That's a great question that I will be talking about in the next episode, but alluding to somewhat through this reading.
I certainly know the group, I think.
It's MJ-12, Chelsea. MJ-12.
But he does seem to be enlightened with some information that nobody else had at the time.
Yeah.
That we now know to be true.
And he's in Nevada. and involved with MUFON in Nevada.
It's not ringing a bell.
Okay.
Okay. I guess we're gonna have to find out.
I would also like to state, he has never said that this information comes directly from him. He's not a primary source for any of this.
Oh,
and
the cow stuff came from someone else?
Linda Howe.
Oh, right, he did say that. My bad. She said that?
Sorry, he connects things. So he definitely makes wild claim connections.
Okay. So he is doing research.
He's speculating, I think is the way you should put it. And he has definitely read the UFO lore of the time. In interviews I've seen, like he's constantly referencing all the books that are out in the time.
Oh, it for sure sounds like he's in the know-how.
I would also like to point out that he says that Dulce is a CIA alien facility. He worked for the CIA prior to this. It's just kind of weird that he would be using a source that's saying this about somebody he worked for. He has no personal way of talking about it, or I don't know. It's just weird, isn't it?
I wonder if he could get in... obviously, he can't get in trouble for it, for saying things like that, having worked for them.
Yeah.
Or, dare I say, it's just not true? I didn't just say that. Never mind.
Let's wait until we're done this document before we lay claim whether or not it's true. And dare I say, even till the second episode ends, so that people listen to the second part. After the initial agreement, Groom Lake, one of the nation's most secret test centers, was closed for a period of about a year, sometimes between 72 and 74, and a huge underground facility was constructed for and with the help of EBEs. The bargain for technology was set in place but could only be operated by the EBEs themselves. Needless to say, the advanced technology could not be used against the EBEs. During the period 79 to 83, it became increasingly obvious to MJ-12 that things were not going as planned. It became known that many more people in the thousands were being abducted that were listed on the official abduction reports.
Wow, official abduction reports.
In addition, it became obvious that some, not all, but some of the nation's missing children had been used for secretions and other parts required by the aliens. Just picture in your mind these aliens with this goop, just like rubbing it all over their body.
I'm not liking the visual that it gives me.
According to some, there was an altercation between the U.S. military and the aliens at Dulce Laboratory. Special Armed Forces unit was called in to try and free a number of our people trapped in the facility who had become aware of what was really going on. According to one source, 66 of the soldiers were killed in the effort. We've covered this in a previous episode. By 1983, MJ-12 must have been in stark terror at the mistake they had made in dealing with the EBEs. They had subtly influenced through Dr. Hynek, formerly with Project Blue Book, who had allegedly broken ties with the Air Force in the late 60s, but who in reality continued to be their informant in his cover capacity as the director of the Center for UFO Studies. Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T. to get public used to odd-looking aliens that were compassionate, benevolent, and very much our space brothers. MJ-12 had in effect sold the EBEs to the public and were now faced with the fact that quite the opposite was true. In addition, a plan had been formulated in 1968 to make the public aware of the existence of aliens on Earth over the next 20 years, to be culminated with several documentaries to be released during the 1985 to 87 period. These documentaries would explain the history and intentions of the EBEs. The discovery of the Grand Deception put the entire plan, hopes, and dreams of MJ-12 in utter confusion and panic. Meeting at the Country Club, a remote lodge with private golf course, comfortable sleeping and working quarters, and its own private airstrip built by and exclusively for the members of MJ-12, it was a factional fight of what to do now. Part of MJ-12, which had now become military top-heavy, wanted to confess the whole scheme and the shambles it had become to the public, beg their forgiveness and ask for their support. The other part of MJ-12 argued that there was no way they could do that and that the situation was untenable and there was no use in exciting the public with the horrible truth that the best plan was to continue the development of a weapon or a plan of containment that could be used against the EBEs under the guise of SDI, the so-called Strategic Defense Initiative, which has nothing whatever to do with a defense for inbound Russian nuclear missiles. In fact, the real purpose for SDI reads the plotting, tracking, and acquisition of articles in deep space. As these words are being written, Dr. Edward Teller, father of the H-bomb, is personally in the nuclear test tunnels of the Nevada test site, driving his workers and associates, in the words of one, like a man possessed, and well he should be. Dr. Teller is a member of MJ-12, along with Henry Kissinger, Admiral Bob B. Idman, and General Admiral Lou Allen. Before Grand Deception was discovered, in following the plan of metered release of information to the public, several documentaries and videotapes were made. William Moore, a Burbank, California-based ufologist, wrote The Roswell Incident, a book published in 1980 that detailed the crash, recovery, and subsequent cover-up of a UFO with 4 alien bodies. Has a videotape of 2 newsmen interviewing a military officer associated with MJ-12. This military officer answers questions relating to the history of MJ-12 and the cover-up, the recovery of a number of flying saucers, and the existence of a living alien. The officer names names, as previously mentioned, plus a few others. Harold Brown, Richard Helms, General Vernon Walters, and Dr. Theodore von Karman as being members of MJ-12. The officer also relates the fact that EBEs claim to have created Christ. The EBEs have a type of recording device that has recorded all of Earth's history and can display it in the form of a hologram.
Wow.
This hologram can be filmed, but because of the way holograms work, it does not come out very clear on film or videotape. The crucifixion of Christ on the Mount of Olives has allegedly been put on film to show the public. The EBEs claim to have created Christ, which in their view of the Grand Deception could be an effort to disrupt the traditional values of undetermined reasons.
What the fuck is this guy talking about?
I know. We've talked about many of these things, and you can clearly see where he's just going off on a tangent.
Oh, yeah. Like, there's well-known stuff in there that he's just connecting in really weird ways. You can tell what's his stuff and what's not.
Moore is also in possession of more Aquarius documents, a few pages for which leaked out several years ago, detailing the super secret NSA project which had been denied by them until just recently. In a letter to Senator John Glenn, NSA's Director of Policy, Julia B. Wetzel wrote, quote, apparently there is or was an Air Force project by the name Aquarius which dealt with UFOs. Coincidentally, there is also an NSA project by that name, end quote. NSA's Project Aquarius deals specifically with communications with aliens. Within the Aquarius program was Project Snowbird, a project to test fly a recovered alien spacecraft at Groom Lake, Nevada. This project continues today at this location. In the words of an individual who works at Groom Lake, quote, our people are much better at taking things apart than they are putting them back together. Chelsea, I'll leave you to speculate on who this person is that's working at Groom Lake.
There's someone that works there. I know there is. Oh.
Don't worry, we'll bring it up later. Another saw a saucer being trucked into Nevada test site in March of 1988. Still another informant witnessed a saucer being buried at that location during the second week of August 1988.
Fuck it, just bury it.
The enormity of the problem must be driving more than a few at the top to drink. But what about the rest of us? Most of those reporting sightings are being viciously ridiculed by government-sponsored debunkers like Philip Klass, former Avionics edition editor for Aviation Week, and space technology NASA scientist James Oberg, and a host of others. When the truth does emerge, if it ever does, how is this shabby, dishonest treatment of totally sane, normal, patriotic citizens going to be justified? Now you ask, why haven't I heard about any of this? Who do you think you would hear it from? Dan Rathers, Tom Brokaw, Sam Donaldson? Wrong. These people just read the news. They don't find it. They have ladies that call and interview witnesses and verify statements on stories coming over the wire. No one, but no one is going to risk their reputation on such outlandish ideas regardless of how many people have reported sightings of 900-foot-long objects running them off the road. Well, then you ask, what about our scientists? What about Carl Sagan, Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke? Wouldn't they know? If Carl Sagan knows, then he is committing great fraud through the solicitation of membership in the Planetary Society to search for extraterrestrial intelligence, not because he's getting autographs. Sorry, I had to add that part. Another charade into which the US government dumps millions of dollars every year is the radio telescope in Arecibo, Puerto Rico, operated by Cornell University with, guess who, Carl Sagan. Cornell University is ostensibly searching for signals from outer space, a sign, maybe, that someone is out there. It's hard to believe that relatively intelligent astronomers like Sagan could be so stupid. One current hypothesis is that from the available evidence, it appears that the EBEs are trying to regenerate their own species at our expense. They have apparently suffered either some kind of nuclear holocaust, or they may be on the backside of a bell-shaped evolutionary curve where in essence they are devolving instead of evolving. In any case, according to the reports of several autopsies of aliens that had been leaked out, the EBEs have an atrophied digestive system and other physical problems. This would account for their attempts to crossbreed with us, as outlined in Intruders by Bud Hopkins, a detailed study of an Indianapolis woman who over several years produces 7 crossbred alien children, none of whom she's allowed to keep, not that she wanted to. Whatever the answer, these facts are indisputable. The extent and number of the persons reported missing every year is closely guarded government secret. Since 1980, at least 20,000 children have been reported missing each year. Completely unrelated, but he did include that. And cattle mutilations are regarded officially by the government as a hoax. Human abductions by aliens are officially regarded by the government as a hoax. The latest poll shows that 88% of all Americans believe in intelligent life on other planets is probable, and that over 20 million Americans have seen what they believe to be a UFO. But the US government officially dismisses the flying saucers as a hoax. What do you think? The best advice I can give is next time you see a flying saucer and are awed by its obvious display of technology and gorgeous lights of pure color, run like hell. And that is what he ends off on. So Chelsea, what do you think of all that?
Well, I have been giving my 2 cents. I think it's funny that he thinks that these people are just reading the news, and there's no irony at all that he just took stuff from other people and then put it together poorly. It's kind of what I'm thinking.
And we've broken down a lot of it as we are going. We've covered many of the things that are said in this statement, which would be groundbreaking at the time. It's really a transfer from like, oh, we're being visited to aliens, to no, they're creatures, we don't know what they're trying to do. They seem to have a sinister thing, which is a shift you see in ufology in the 1980s.
It's really too bad that it was so saturated with this particular information at the time.
That's being put forth by about 4 different people. That all names keep coming up.
This is really all the information, and it still shaped the information we have to this day, which is crazy. Like, it's coming from these people, and then all these other people kind of, I don't know the connection at this point with him to these people that we are referring to. It may still be a surprise to you when it comes up, but is he directly involved? Doesn't seem like it from that article.
Well, he's going to be directly involved. It's going to come up, and we're going to end off on this point in history. That's all his research compiled and written down is what he has, and he brings it in 1987 to a newsroom in Nevada to basically say, I want to talk to somebody about all the things I've compiled. And who should overhear this but a man who is only known at this point for investigations into underground crime and the mafia in Las Vegas? George Knapp overhears this. And at this point begins his career as a journalist in ufology.
Oh no.
And he sits down for an interview with John Lear in 1988. And this is where I'm going to cut this episode.
This is the worst place to leave it. I am highly dissatisfied with this ending.
Well, then I guess you're going to have to stick around for part 2.
There's going to be a riot. I have to go kick a bison.
Oh no, that man was a future listener to the podcast, wasn't he?
Fuck.
I guess the only way. Chelsea's very dissatisfied and without words. So I have been Taylor, here with Chelsea. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to Journey to the Fringe. If you have liked what you have listened to, please like, share, subscribe, or follow, depending on what venue you are listening to us through. Also, please, if possible, leave a 5-star review, as that really helps us in the algorithms. Should you wish to interact with us, please check us out on your social media of choice. I bet you we are there. And if you really want to communicate with us and give us ideas for new episodes, or tell us that we're wrong and terrible, either way, please send us an email at journeytothefringe@gmail.com. For now, I'll see you in the next episode.